All right, gentlemen. So, what are we rolling on? Spokesman, today we are talking about recognition and world dynamics. And we are drawing inspiration from the what the vice president described as the bold decision from Norway, Ireland, and Spain in recognizing Palestine. Does it really make a difference?
Yes, indeed. And I think thanks a lot, Mr. President. Thanks a lot, Spokes, for us to dissect this current world affair issue of recognition of Palestine and relate it to the situation in Amazonia and what the Hague of Sea is doing in terms of our own recognition, be it formal or informal recognition. Bear in mind that there are former states, just as there are informal states. By informal, we mean states that exist, but they are not formally recognized under the UN, the international instruments, but they currently exist and they are self-determined, self-governed, and they look after their own future political affairs. So we will look into that today, and I think the discussion is going to be very inspiring for our cause. Is going to throw in more light into what Amazonia is up to.
Right. I submit that these recognitions, though unprecedented, comes after more than 130 other countries had already recognized Palestine. And I see it simply as a political statement rather than changing legal realities or giving Palestine as an international personality other rights under international law. I will go right away into the question of recognition and its correlation with statehood, because this is very important for the state of Amazonia. We have argued and rightfully that Amazonia is a state, whether it is recognized or it is not recognized. It is a state. It has international personality under international law, and this fits squarely into the vice president description of formal and informal statehood. And they are what we call the three element doctrine of recognition. This is very important. I have argued this, and I think the spokesman, vice president in numerous outings, it is described as the three element doctrine of recognition. When countries come to recognize states and why they recognize states, they have to fulfill three fundamental conditions. They are not static. Sometimes there are alterations based on whether a state is recognized by an international body or whether it is recognized by another state. The first thing is the state must have a fixed territory. And we all agree that Amazonia has a fixed territory. Though we are talking about the Palestinian situation, we want to make sure we use this situation to highlight Amazonia in a way that Amazonians come to use their own case to understand Palestine rather than the other way around. And so you must have a fixed territory. A fixed territory means you must have an international border, and that Amazonia had through the Milner-Simon Treaty between the French and the British in 1919, an international border between Amazonia and Cameroon and Amazonia and Nigeria. The second condition in this three element doctrine that states use to be able to recognize another state is that of the fixed territory must have the element of a people. They call it the state people. And in the Banjul outcome in 2006, if anybody ever doubted whether we are a people, that was laid to rest in 2006. It is on the basis of peoplehood and territory that the League of Nations assigned us, the status of a mandate under the British system and the trust under the British system in 1946. The last element, which is critical, which is what we have been clamoring and talking about, is what I call state power. State power, it manifests itself sometimes in a government that has governmentality, can exercise jurisdiction over the territory, and demonstrate that we have always used control of territory. We have used control of territory as a manifestation of state power. That's why we talked about dynamic control. We talked about static control as very important in showcasing the third aspect of the three-element doctrine of state recognition. And for the case of Ambazonia, I think we have been able to demonstrate the two other elements, and we are still struggling to demonstrate the third element.
You have clearly likened the actions of Israel in Palestine to those of Cameroon in Ambazonia, and why Norway, Ireland, and Spain would intervene through grassroots mobilization, through grassroots call for something to be done. But it is also the case that Norway and Ireland represent one of the leading countries in respecting the rule of law, human rights. Because you would recall, and Ambazonians would recall, Cameroon has tagged us rats. It's a policy. Cameroon has tagged us all inhumane names, and they follow on their policy to make sure that those considered as inhumane, the Ambazonians, are exterminated. And that has been done so much. But countries like Norway, where I know most Ambazonians would know this, the president resides in, countries like Ireland, where I reside in, these are countries that have stood both privately and publicly for human rights, for upholding international rules and norms. And as such, we can recall that all of us sitting here have been reported to our different institutions by Cameroon in an attempt to dehumanize, in an attempt to circumvent the principles and the values that these two states hold dear and underpinned by their policies. So what are Ambazonians supposed to do in this situation? What we've been able to do in our countries of residence, and I think this might not come as a surprise, but it will be to many, is that the Ambazonian Governing Council, through the president, through the vice president, have engaged both at local level, at political and at diplomatic level, these two countries, to bait for Ambazonia. And I think we have severally told Ambazonians that there are countries that the Ambazonian Governing Council rather have engage.
The truth is, it's a million miles from the reality of EU-Africa trade policy as it exists now, because our economic relations with Africa are simply a continuation of European colonialism, perpetuating exploitation by other means. Africa trades more with Europe than it does with itself. It's portrayed as a poor continent, but actually it's the richest. It's just that the people there are denied the fruits of their land and their labour by unequal economic relations, by unfair trade rules, by illicit capital flights into the Western banks, and by multinational corporations allowed off the leash by Washington, London and Brussels. I don't think you'd have to be a genius to know that the last thing the Horn of Africa needs is more foreign military bases, more weapons and more European meddling. What we call our strategic relationship isn't about human flourishing, it's about the EU's ambitions as a superpower. There's now a new great game in the Horn of Africa. Greater and lesser powers are pockmarking the place with military bases. France, the US, China, Germany, Japan, Italy, Saudi Arabia all have a presence in the tiny area of Djibouti alone. Mercenaries are swarming in from all quarters. The entire region is being militarized. War is in the air. And what about the people facing climate and food insecurity? None of this benefits them. We talk about instability, but we only make it worse. We flood the place with weapons, hand over the profits to European arms companies and charge the bill to our citizens. And then with the carnage, we go back in and we do it all again. It's a racket. Strategic relationship, it's one thing after another, isn't it? Really, it's the same as it ever was. And all I can say is God save Africa from Europeans offering help.